like he was the Matrix before the Matrix. You know what I mean? He had the black leather and the buckles and the he was like a Layfield like drawing on screen with all the buckles and the harnesses and the guns with the like 18 different bullet, holes
Yep.
in them. So like he was always stylish. He brought a lot to that character. That's what I love about Blade. That's what I love so much about what Wesley did with that character. What he brought to the character. Because every time after you saw Blade, be it on a different medium, be it cartoon or television, you expected him to look a certain way. And when he didn't look a certain way, you were like, wait, why is he bald? He should have like some dope design in his hair, and he should have some like crazy like bald fade, but he should have hair with like some dope design in the back and be tatted up, and all jacked.
And this was the 90s when those tattoos were badass. Like I
Yeah,
thought,
when tribal tats were like
yeah,
the thing.
like barbed wire, stuff like that. I thought he had the baddest tattoos. I guess he goes to a barber. Does Whistler and Scud cut his hair?
I'm pretty sure Whistler cuts his hair.
Oh, we need that deleted scene, right?
Yeah, like that bonding moment of him like giving him a fresh fade and they talking about, sports and like just like at the barbershop. When I go to the barbershop, it'll be that same energy between them,
Scud doesn't cut hair.
Scud barely washes his hair. Like even back then, Scud didn't look like he washed his hair. And he
awesome.
Still looks like he doesn't wash his hair.
Oh, and also I just gotta say before we get too sidetracked, I love a good like military vest on characters. So Blade pulls off that vest like it's remember in Universal Soldier when Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren are wearing those vests, and then you have Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando with that badass vest.
Yeah.
Like what are they called? Like I don't know what they are. But I just love a good sleeveless vest.
Well, you know what? I think the Commando one, if I'm not mistaken, I think was just LBE. So I think he was just rocking like an LBE with no shirt on or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then, or it could have been like it might have been a bulletproof vest, but I think that was how you showed how badass you guys were in those movies back then in the 90s. You had to have guns showing. You had to have a giant gun, and you were ready to wreck some, stuff. You were just ready to go off.
Did you see how jacked Donnie Yen was in this movie? There's a scene.
Wait, can we talk about Donnie Yen?
Yeah, there's a scene.
I'm sorry, Donnie.
In this movie where they're about to go in a door, and he's flexing. He's obviously flexing for the camera, but I have never seen Donnie Yen that jacked. Like, so I love the Ip Man franchises. I've covered it in Rotten Tomatoes. I made sure it got in there in an Action Franchise article. Huge fan of his. He's fighting Scott Adkins in Ip Man 4, I mean, that's Scotty Axe is like my homeboy. I love that guy. But he's jacked in this movie. And also, I love when he does like the double tap on his chest and he hits his chin, then he does the point. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's the signature right there when he runs up and he goes, pa, 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 pa. Like, so I love Donnie Yen, right? I've been a big old school Chinese martial arts film fan my whole life growing up. So I have a lot of his older movies, a lot of his classic movies. And when I found out he was in Blade 2, I was like, what? Like I think at the time I was the only person in my friend group who knew who Donnie Yen was, and I was like, oh my God, Donnie Yen's going to be in Blade 2. And they were like, oh, okay. Yeah, Donnie Yen. And nobody knew who he was. And I'm just like, what? Donnie Yen's the man. So when I saw him and when he, in that scene when, when they're in the club and he runs up and he does the kick.
Oh yeah, the double kick or triple kick.
Oh, I was like, the triple kick. He was like, blah, blah, and then he sits there. I'm just like, oh my God, it's Donnie Yen.
And then he does the point. He does the point at the guy. He has a sword resting on his shoulder, and he points at the Reaper.
Yeah, and he's just like, bring it, bro.
I'm Donnie Yen.
Like, I like Donnie Yen is the man, and even to this day, he's still badass. He's still making these movies. He's still like doing all the crazy stunt work, and it was just such a pleasure to see him in that movie, and just that scene in itself is such an iconic scene. Like when they all go in after he gets the group together and they go to the club and they're just like, all right, we're going to find this guy. We're going to wreck shit and we're going to go in. Oh, and it's just, they all have their scene. They all have their moment where they're just beating ass. And then Donnie comes up and he does that triple kick and it just blew my mind. And I was like, thank you.
And he would have been in more, but he had to go back to filming on this film. Like he had to go back to Hong Kong to go shoot a movie. And did you know that this movie ended up shooting for 100 days because Wesley Snipes tore his MCL on a shot that wasn't like on a shot he wanted to add at the end of the day, and they're like, oh, well, it's not really necessary. So then they had to recreate a lot of those action scenes. I don't know if you knew that or not. So then that messed up the schedule. So certain actors they had to kill off Donnie Yen really quick. That's why his death is basically off screen. So that, like, it's not like he gets a punk death. They just literally had to do that to get him back to another movie. And you know who I love this whole blood pack. You know, I love that. What's that one guy's name? He's in. Oh, Tony Curran. He ends up popping up in Underworld 2 as the main vampire. He plays Priest. Yeah. And then I miss Matt. Shove, the Chupa, because he was in. Remember in 2001, Fast and the Furious, right? He was that dude in Fast and the Furious. And then he pops up in Torque, that movie Torque with a mullet. And then he's the bad guy in Transporter. And he was also in Blade 1. He played a henchman who got a couple lines, got his arm cut off. Then he went and put on 70 pounds of muscle and came back to Blade 2. Oh, wow. And no one even knew it. So if you watch Blade 1, at the end, that big fight, he's one of the guys who gets a couple lines, gets his arm cut off. So if you see him in Blade 2, he's jacked. Like, he's probably, 230 maybe in this film? Because he's like 6'2", so he was looking, like, huge in that. So he put on they said he put on 70 pounds of muscle. That's a lot. Maybe he put on, like, 40 pounds, but he got jacked for this. And so he's in Blade 1 and 2.
That's hilarious. That's
maybe his twin brother was killed by Blade, and then he was training to kill Blade because of that.
Because of that, and he knew that he had to train in order to defeat the Blade, because if he didn't, the Blade would just take him out.
Oh, that blows my mind. Hey, let's do something. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk more Blade 2. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks, and I gotta tell you something. When the Reaper was eating Priest, did you notice the stuff coming out of its back? And do you know what that symbolized?
What, that, like, gushy, like... Yeah, no, I don't know what it symbolized. What did it symbolize?
Del Toro is basically like it eats and shits at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And they said that he was just, Del Toro wanted that. So Goyer, during the commentary, he's like, watch this scene, Wesley. He's like, yeah, the thing eats, and then it excretes all the stuff it doesn't need through its back. So it's eating and crapping.
Wow.
And Goyer is also really funny during the commentary. You know when they all go down through that tunnel? Goyer's he's like, if you watch every Del Toro movie, he's like, you'll see that Del Toro loves vaginas. And he said that he was on set with Del Toro, and Del Toro's like, look at that over there. Like, he did a much better accent. He's like, that's a vagina. So I guess Del Toro designed sets to make it look like those things. And then Del Toro admitted it. And then Del Toro also, he's like, one thing I have in every movie are jars of things. So in that Damaskinos, his lair, he had jars of dead things in jars, just because Guillermo del Toro loves jars of dead things. So there's a lot of weird Del Toro things in this movie. And I had watched this movie for years, and I just thought it was a fun action romp, which it's a brainless. Like, I know a critic, get this, a critic complained about this. They're like, the movie is just one action scene, Blade talking, and then another action scene. I'm like, what's wrong with that?
No. You say that like it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm like, it's one action scene. And if you think about it, a lot of the action scenes don't really hold up. So the first one, you have a very... Okay, did you like the first action scene with the motorcycles, or did you find it boring?
So thinking back to the young me that watched that movie, the younger me, right? That first action scene, I wasn't, like, over the moon for. I didn't dislike it either. But I just looked at it like, okay, they're introducing Blade again, right? They're showing us how badass he is with this scene, and this is just going to be like a taste of what to come. So that's the way I kind of viewed it then. And even now, like watching it, the thing that doesn't hold up is just the visual effects for the most part, right?
Yeah.
So I think when you watch that scene now, with all the great leaps and bounds that we've made technologically with visual effects, it pulls you out of it a little bit. but I never disliked the scene either. But again, it wasn't like that first scene in the first Blade. That to me is an iconic scene.
Iconic. Yeah, at the end, right? That fight scene.
Yeah, it's just so much in that's so memorable about it. So for me, it wasn't like, oh, this is super memorable. Oh, it was just like, oh, okay. They're introducing them. They're showing them how bad it is. They're like taking it up a notch from Blade 1. That's how I viewed it. Oh, they took it up a
Yeah.
notch a little bit. And then this is just introducing them. And then we're going to see some more stuff. Hopefully that gets better. And it did.
The only time I almost fell asleep while watching this movie is when the motorcycle henchman misses, and then he turns around the motorcycle very slowly.
Yeah.
It's like he drives past Blade, and he's like, like Blade just could have stabbed him and walked behind him. I don't know. That scene is the only thing I don't like. And then the next one with Nisa and Assad when they attack Blade, when they attack his domicile.
Yeah.
So like all they have to do is deliver a message, and then a massive fight scene. But Nisa and Assad are so powerful in that scene, and then the rest of the movie, Nisa really isn't anywhere near that level.
Now, all right, so it's funny that you say that because, again, this is something I find, it's like unfortunate that they tend to do this to female characters in movies, but like, she was only strong when you didn't know she was a woman per se. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the minute you find out, oh, she's a woman, oh, she's not nearly as strong or nearly as formidable as she was in when you first see them. Because like you said, when you first see them, they're beating everybody's ass in there. And then when the reveal happens and you see it's a female, it's a woman, like they downgrade her a little bit, throughout.
She had the knife right to Blade's, balls. Like she had him dead to rights.
Yeah, dead to rights. Yeah.
It was like a stalemate. And then her brother just kidnaps her. I mean, she had those cool scenes in the tunnels, which I kind of loved, where she was just wiping people out. And I thought Ron Perlman looked badass there. But yeah, no, you're right, man. It was kind of weird that she fought Blade to a standstill, then the rest of her character, she just kind of walked around. And they were actually making like Blade, I don't know, in the commentary, Goyer and Wesley Snipes hated that little gold thing around her neck. And it was kind of like, it's cringe inducing now. They're like, I wish you would have taken that off and like unbuttoned her shirt a little bit. Like, there's like, she needs to be more feminine. I'm like, geez Louise, guys. And then Wesley's like, he said everyone wanted to be more Trinity at that part. So I guess when they were auditioning actresses, they all wanted to be Trinity from The Matrix. And I never found anything wrong with that. But yeah, no, so then you had that scene where she was super powerful. And then you have the blood pack where they're unloading thousands of bullets at these things. And they're like, oh yeah, we can just kill them with light. But no, don't get me wrong though. I love these fight scenes. I really do.
Yeah, no, they're great. But you know what? And I think too, that speaks to like when he adapts these like comic book films, it's like he doesn't hit the mark a lot of the times in the way that it needs to be hit. So like with Nissa's character, like you said, she starts out at one point and then like when you find out she's she's downgraded, and I think sometimes he has a tendency to kind of he doesn't put that thing in there that makes the characters, that makes you like them, that makes them unique. You know what I mean? And I think too that's a big thing that's more common in, I feel, maybe American cinema. And I think that's why I like anime and manga so much, because they're not afraid to have like strong female leads, not be very pigeonholed into like a stereotypical trope kind of situation. Like when you look at Ghost in the Shell as a prime example of like a very, not the Scarlett Johansson version, people. I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about the anime version of the movie. The character is multidimensional, even though she's a robot, and she knows she's a robot, but she knows that she's questioning her existence based around this world that she lives in that's so technologically advanced. And the fact that she knows, like, it's just something that you don't see too often in American portrayals of female characters. I think they're getting better with it lately, with a lot of the characters.
Just not Black Widow.
Yeah.
Oh, Rita Vertasky, Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow, yeah.
And then Mad Max Fury Road. And also I think Cameron too, man, with Ripley, with Avatar, even True Lies with Jamie Lee Curtis's character later on. And like Speed with Sandra